So we can use a lot of grouping here to do all of these types of problems. Now there's a lot of different methods to factoring, but we can always factor by grouping. So I look at this problem and it looks like there's no way to factor it by grouping because you don't have four terms there. But in reality, we actually can. The only thing we have to do is we have to switch some things around here. So what we have to do is we have to think about factors, okay, that will multiply to give you 10, okay, and that will add together to give you 7. And so you have to think about those factors. So the factors of 10 are like 5 and 2, 10 and 1. That's it, right? And so you have 5 and 2 and 10 and 1. And the only way to get 7 is with these guys, but they have to be added together. And so what we're always thinking about when we're doing these types of problems is, what are my factors of my last term that will add together to give you that middle term? Now remember, there's an x there, right? So that means these both have to be x's as well. And so what we need to think about is rewriting this as a way to group. So instead of writing 7x, we can write it as 5x plus 2x plus 10. Okay? I'm spreading it out. Instead of writing 7x, I'm going to take it back into an unsimplified form. Okay? Now I have four terms, and I can group. When we do grouping, we always got to make sure that we combine that parenthesis on the outside of my sign right here. Okay, so the first set of terms need to be factored out, right? Well, I can only factor an x out of that. And so on the inside, what's left is x plus 5. The other side, the only thing I can factor out of that is a 2. And it's a positive 2. So we're going to take a 2 out, and what's going to be left is x plus 5. So if you remember back from when we were looking at grouping, you're trying to take the GCF out of both of these items, right? And so we're taking the GCF of the first set of parentheses, and we're taking the GCF out of the second set of parentheses, which is the greatest common factor. Your goal is always to get the same thing, see? And once you get the same thing, then you can factor out that like term, which is x plus 5, and then just bring down what's left, x plus 2. And that's your answer. And so what you have here is you have two binomials that, if I want to, I can refoil those, right? So looking backwards, what we did before was we multiplied these things. Now we're just taking it back out, okay, and expanding it. So I can always refoil that and check and see if I get the answer that's up here. So, I mean, that's a way to check it. So let's look at another problem. Okay, same thing. What we want to do is we want to break down -9, okay, into some terms that are going to add or to multiply together to give you 20. Okay, so you're always trying to look and see this last term is 20. Okay, well, what we want to do is we want to find factors of that 20, right, that are going to add together to give you 9. Okay, and so when we think about factors of 20, I think of 5 and 4. I think of 20 and 1, and I think of 10 and 2. And when I look at these, the only way I think that I can get 9 is by looking at 5 and 4. But what you got to remember is that if you have a negative on the outside here, well, we gotta take care of that. And so to get -9, these both would have to be negative, because -5 plus -4 is -9. So I'm going to rewrite it as x squared minus 5, don't forget your x, minus 4x plus 20. And like I said before, essentially all we're doing is taking this 9 and breaking it into two pieces, a 5x and a 4x, and they both are negative here. And we can group. Always group around your sign. So the first set of parentheses, the greatest common factor there is just x. And what's left is x minus 5. Now what we want is x minus 5 on the other side. And so this is where you need to look at it and say, well, what's the greatest common factor? Well, between these two numbers, 4 is the greatest common factor. But I have to take a negative out. And the reason why is because you have this is negative here and this is positive here. And they're different, okay? They're different here. So if I don't take that negative out, then what I'm going to have is an x plus 5. And I don't want that. I want x minus 5. And so if I take a negative 4 out, what's left on the inside will be a positive x because I'm taking negative 4 out. And what's left when I take negative 4 out of 20 is going to be a minus 5 instead of a plus 5. And that's important, okay? It's crucial that we have the same thing. And so that's why we always group by putting this parenthesis around this whole thing so that I can make these two things look the same. We want these two factors to look the same. Those are my common factors. We're going to take them out, which is x minus 5, and what I'm going to bring down is what's left. Okay? Let's go ahead and take a look at one more. Or maybe two more. We're going to take a look at two more. Okay, let's take a look at this one. So now we're finding factors of negative 3 that add together to give you 2. Alright, so 3 really only has two factors, 3 and 1, right? So how do I get 2? Well, the 1 has to be negative because 3 minus 1 would be 2, positive 2. So you really got to think about these signs when you're looking at them. Will these two things still multiply together to give you negative 3? Well, that's true. So what I can do is I can break this down into x squared plus 3x minus 1x minus 3. A lot of times people ask me, well, do you need to have that 3x and minus 1x? Can they be switched? Like, can you put them in a different place? Well, sure. You don't have to have them in the same thing because you can still factor these by grouping and everything will still work out. So what we're going to do is we're going to group the first part. Again, group the second part with that negative. Okay, so in the first set of parentheses, I see an x squared and I see a 3x. There's nothing in common in terms of numbers, but there is an x in common, and so we can take an x out. What's left in the inside is an x plus 3. Now what you're looking for is you're looking to get x plus 3 again on this other side. And so what you need to think about is, well, what can I take out of both of those items? Nothing really, right? The only thing I can take out is 1, because that's the only thing that they have in common. But if I take 1 out, I'm going to be left with the same thing, and that's not x plus 3. And so what we have to do is we have to take a negative 1 out. And so what's left is 1x or x. And then I divide that by a negative 1, so that's going to make 3. Now I have my x plus 3's. Bring down your common term, or common factor, and then bring down your what's left. And there you go. So you got to think about it, always looking at factors, okay? Let's take a look at one more example real quick. So we have negative 8 this time, and we have a negative 2. And so what we want to do is we want to find factors in negative 8. So that's 4 and 2, 8 and 1. That's all I can think of. So we need to get negative 2. Well, this ain't going to help. But this one will. We just have to think about the numbers. So I need to get negative 2. So does 2 need to be negative, or does 4 need to be negative? Or do they both have to be negative? In this case, 4 has to be negative because negative 4 plus 2 is negative 2. You got to keep track of the numbers, okay? Always use a calculator to try to check some of your work there. So we're going to switch this to x squared minus 4x plus 2x minus 8. Remember, we got to remember that there are x's here. All I'm doing is changing this number in the center to reflect what I want up there. So I'm just changing it to make it 2 numbers so that I can go ahead and group. Okay? So the first set of parentheses, again, all that's left is x. And I can take that out, and what's going on in the inside is x minus 4. And then when I look at the second one, well, that's a little different. I see a 2x, I see an 8. The greatest common factor there is 2, and it's positive. I don't want to take a negative out here because I want this sign in the center to be negative like it is right now. So 8 divided by 2 is 4, and I've gotten my two common factors, x minus 4. Bring it down, bring down what's left. Okay, so you got to practice some of them, okay? But really all you're doing is you got to think a little bit about factors and like what will add together to give you certain numbers. Okay, it's a little bit of mental math, but I think you can handle it.